Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kia ora, Bolt fam. It's the director. Chargers fans, the Bolts are heading to Cleveland to face the Cleveland Browns yet again. You guys remember this game last season? This game last year was insane. I think the score was something like 47-42. Do I think it's going to be as dramatic this season? I don't think so. I think it could be something crazy, but maybe not as crazy as we saw last year with the Chargers giving up 42 points to the Browns. That's absolutely insane. And this was due mainly last year to the Chargers' run defense being absolutely atrocious. It was bad. We had questions as Chargers fans after this game. What are we going to do about the offense or the defense? The offense is firing on all cylinders. This year, it may be a bit of a different narrative, right? This year, the Chargers defense is looking a little bit better versus the run. Maybe they are better equipped to face Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but will it be good enough? Well, they're going to be put to their true test on Sunday when facing the Browns, and honestly, this one could get a little bit crazy. So in today's video, we're going to be going over everything. Injury report, how the Chargers should attack the Browns, what to watch out for when facing the Browns on defense, etc., etc. It should be a pretty good one. Now, as always, guys, I do have my picks for Underdog Fantasy this week. Of course, last week we won a crispy $500 on the Chargers. I think I'm going to go right back to that well this week because, as you guys can see from these picks, I think I have an idea of how this game is going to go down. Feel free to copy these picks and leave your suggestions in the comment section below. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100 and get in on the action. As a reminder as well, we do have a giveaway going on right now. We're giving away this signed Antonio Gates jersey to one of my subscribers. I got to enter, hit up the link in the description, follow the instructions there. Very simple, and make sure you are subscribed. Only subs can win. Of course, we do giveaways and twos around here. We're also giving away this signed LaDainian Tomlinson jersey to one of my crew members. All you got to do to be entered for this is be a member of my crew, and that is it. We're drawing the names here, I think, in the next few days. Good luck to everybody, and let's kick this thing up. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it, baby. Lights, camera, action. The Chargers at Cleveland Browns, Week 5 game preview. Let's jump right into it, guys. We got a fair amount to talk about today. Let's start with our injury report, as always. And again, this week maybe doesn't have the best news for Chargers fans, but it does have a little bit of good news, right? The team is starting to head in the right direction when it comes to injuries. We're still going to be waiting on Joey Bosa. Rashawn Slater's still out for probably the entirety of the season. However, we do have a lot of guys coming off the list this week as well. But let's start with the bad news. Keenan Allen, hamstring, did not practice again this week. This was after getting some promising news last week that maybe he might suit up versus the Texans, re-aggravated that hamstring injury, and does remain out to this day. Hopefully, Keenan can make his return close to 100% after the first half of games where things do get a little bit sketchy for the Chargers. So no Keenan Allen this week. Gerald Everett hopped on and off of the injury report very quickly. I think he's going to be just fine this week. Justin Herbert, probably the best news so far in this injury report, is it seems like he is back to practicing at full. He looks to be back to his former self. Very good to see that. Of course, we've seen Justin Herbert played, maybe not at 100%. And yes, it does show a little bit. He does play through a lot every single season, stuff that maybe we'll never find out about or never know about. But as of right now, it looks like he has bounced back. Hopefully, knock on wood, he can remain that way the rest of the season. Dustin Hopkins has been limited in practice all week long. The Chargers did go out there and sign a backup kicker. I forget the name, but he's going to be questionable for this game. Maybe look for the Chargers to bring in a backup in this game. Xander Horvath, a bunch of these other guys, on the list here, practicing in full. The only other one that's kind of, worth mentioning here is going to be Joshua Palmer, who has been questionable. He did get a full practice in on Friday, though, so it looks like he should be suiting up on Sunday as well. But the big one I did want to highlight that maybe flies under the radar for some people is Donald Parham. Donald Parham, we've been waiting for him to come back since week 1, right? Since this offseason, I should say. And he's been practicing in full. They've been very careful monitoring that injury, and he's going to get his first slice of Chargers football in the regular regular season on Sunday. And I do think the Chargers have plenty of uses for a guy like Donald Parham. So look for his number on Sunday. I think he's going to be a part of that game plan. Next up, let's take a look at the Cleveland Browns. They have some big names to monitor on this one as well. Again, we're going to kind of skip over the full ones as I think those guys are definitely going to suit up. Jadeveon Clowney, however, is going to be one of those big names to monitor. He's been questionable. He did get a full practice, or I should say a limited practice on Friday. We may or may not see him on Sunday. Taven Bryan's questionable. Let's see, who else do we have in here? We should see a Myles Garrett somewhere. Yes, Myles Garrett right here. Getting 3 limited practices in this week. He was in, I think, a car accident a couple of weeks ago. Glad to hear he's okay. As far as when he's going to return to full health, we actually just don't know. He may actually return in this game. I would say that he's trending towards playing in this game. Whether it be 100% or not of snaps, we do not know yet. So those are some pretty big names to monitor, especially those edge rushers for the Cleveland Browns. That could be a big swing if they take the field, maybe not 100% or maybe not at all. So keep that in mind as we're going into Sunday. So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty of this game, some of the things to watch out as for Chargers fans, some things maybe the Chargers want to keep in mind when attacking this Cleveland Browns defense that's honestly pretty dang good, even without Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett. They are definitely a lot better with them, but still a team to take very seriously. The first thing I do want to talk about, though, is Keenan Allen and yet another day without him. The Chargers, at this point of the season, I would say, as a fan, watching, observing, using my eyeballs, they've been kind of subpar when it comes to third down conversions this season. And it's largely due, in fact, to the Chargers really missing Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is a very big part of this offense. Keenan Allen is a big part to Justin Herbert and having that guy available on third down. That's why we call him, third and Keenan. This is a big part of this team. And to not have him back yet again is going to be another test of this Chargers offense and whether or not how they're going to move the ball healthy and drive healthy drives throughout the course of this game, especially versus a defense that has some pretty good DBs and linebackers. And this is mainly, again, we are missing Keenan Allen. The Chargers are going to have to figure out another week to how to survive without him. But fortunately for the Bolts, I saw many things last week that tells me we're starting to figure things out a little bit. And I think ultimately this is going to help the Chargers into the future, even when we do get Keenan Allen back. We're getting a little bit more creative with how we're using the weapons the Chargers and Justin Herbert have available to them right now. The biggest one of which being Mike Williams. He's been seeing much more creative use these last few weeks. You guys will notice last week I was talking and praising a little bit to Joe Lombardi, saying, man, it's good to see Mike Williams being used more as just a 50-50 guy, a toss it up and pray guy. He's actually getting some routes in there, be it some simple routes, slants and posts and what have you, but he's becoming a little bit more versatile in how the Chargers are using him, and I do think that's a great way for the Chargers to continue on in a trend. Get Mike Williams more suited into that X receiver role. That X receiver is going to have to do a lot more than run streaks and hope for 50-50 balls to work in his favor. Not that that's what Mike Williams is as a player, but that's where I feel like the Chargers mainly utilize him as. Great strength, but he has a lot more to offer, and I want to see this continue into week 5. He's going to be facing a very good cornerback in Denzel Ward, but Williams is still a mismatch in my opinion. Williams is 6'4", Denzel Ward is 5'11". Let Williams continue to expand his route tree, but ultimately, when in doubt, you can still toss it up, a high point pass from Justin Herbert and hope that he can create some space vertically to come down with something, even with Denzel Ward in his area. Williams will have every chance to complete something like that over Ward. But beyond that, I hope the Chargers, do utilize their weapons. Justin Herbert's going to sling it wherever available. Let's make guys like Michael Bandy, Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett available to this guy, and the Chargers should be able to move the ball vertically with very few problems as long as they're efficient, right? Make sure to use these guys creatively and not become too predictable Joe when it comes to the play calling on offense. So mix these guys in. I think the Chargers should be just fine surviving another week without Keenan Allen. Speaking about utilizing these wide receivers, next topic here is called dial up the H-bombs. I know, Chargers fans, we've been waiting. I think, honestly, a lot of us have been waiting since his rookie season to see the return of the prime, H-bomb era. And what an H-bomb is Justin Herbert bomb, right? These are passes beyond 20 yards, the big plays. I think the Chargers are going to have a good opportunity this week to try and flex that a little bit, right? Cleveland and the Browns. These guys give up a ton of 20-yard plays. I think among the top 10 in the league when it comes, maybe even top 5. I don't even remember. Somewhere really close in terms of how many big plays that they give up every single week. That's a pretty big one for the Chargers to pay attention to when you've got a quarterback like Justin Herbert. this may be, you know, a good week to test the deep ball early. And why I say early is because, you know, you can get guys like DeAndre Carter, you know, tested and available over top. But what this is ultimately going to do is push that defense back a little bit, right? Mix in some Mike Williams as well and DeAndre Carter. See if we can get the Browns defense on their toes a little bit early. And by accomplishing this early, if the Chargers and Justin Herbert can complete a couple of deep bombs, you know, let's say going into the second quarter, this is going to create some space for our guys underneath. And what I've noticed as a Chargers fan is once you start giving space to these guys, Austin Eckler, Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett, things start to really happen on offense. And I think the true method in unlocking that is by two ways. One, establishing the run, which the Chargers can definitely do this week. Or two, get the defense to respect the deep ball. If you can accomplish both, more the better, right? Either way, this is going to be very important to creating space. And with the Browns giving up so much over the top in 20-plus yard plays, I would say the Chargers should try and dial up that H-bomb early this game, right? Run it a couple of times, get a drive, you know, going, and throw in some play actions, right? Some RPOs, something. Get something going over the top for the Chargers to create some space early when it comes to, you know, backing off the defense. And I think more importantly, even more so than creating space for our receivers underneath, is creating space for our running backs, right? We're trying to, you know, get them to hold hands here in terms of their offensive scheme. And that's where our next subject comes in, another Eckler Day, the Eckler Day sequel, right? The Browns suck versus the run this year, which is kind of crazy, right? Their defensive line is usually one of those units where you're like, man, you got to watch out for them Browns, dude. They got some, you know, big boys in the middle. They got some great edge defenders and Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. Watch out for this team. This year, they're a little bit soft up the middle. I'm not going to lie. They're struggling versus the run. And Austin Eckler, who had a fantastic week last week, is probably primed to have it, you know, happen again this week versus the Browns if the Chargers can properly utilize his talent and give him some space on the outside and underneath. Let's run it back with Austin Eckler this week, right? Last week we talked a lot about Gerald Everett being that guy, that plan of attack, that weapon that we want to, push into the limelight to give ourselves the best chance of success versus the Texans. This week I'm going back to the Eckler well. I think Eckler could be the dude this week. Get this running attack established by helping him out with a deep passing attack as well. That's all I'm saying. The passing attack helps the running attack. The running attack helps the passing attack, vice versa. I think you start things off this week with the passing attack to create some space, and then let's feature Austin Eckler a little bit this week, right? Let's continue to try and create some space, and as always, get him involved underneath in the pass as well. I think Austin Eckler could be in for another big week. If you fantasy owners out there are looking for a nice play this week, especially in underdog fantasy, take a look at the Austin Eckler pick'ems, right? I feel like Eckler is going to be in for another big workload, and I do think he's got a great matchup this week versus the Cleveland Browns. So let's run it back with Austin Eckler this week. But I also want to mention that the Chargers do have more to offer than just Austin Eckler in terms of the running attack. I think it's time that the Chargers expand their thinking a little bit when it comes to the backup running backs. I think Joshua Kelly, in my opinion, at this point of the season is better than Sony Michel. And we all got very excited about Sony Michel and adding him to the roster, but last week was not great. And I think due to that, it's time to get somebody else in the limelight a little bit. Let's try some new things out. If it ain't working, don't keep trying it and hope for a different result. That's the definition of insanity. Let's try out our rookie fourth round pick and a guy like Isaiah Spiller. So this next segment is called an Isaiah Spiller debut. Like I mentioned before, Sony Michel last week faced a soft Texans defense versus the run. The Texans great in pass rushing. They've got a pretty underrated defense overall, but they are not great versus the run. So we handed that opportunity to Sony Michel, and you guys know what happened? Sony Michel put up something about 1.8 yards per carry on 6 attempts last week. 1.8 yards per carry. That just gives me flashbacks to the Chargers backup running backs that I do not want to relive. And I do think it was an honest and fair shot for Sony Michel to kind of see what he has to offer at this point of the season. And at this point, the Chargers, who are deadly serious about their RB2, are probably looking to try something new. Because that, honestly, 1.8 yards per carry, that's not good enough for me. And that's why I think it's time to debut Isaiah Spiller in Week 5 versus the Cleveland Browns. Because, again, this week we face the Browns, who are 30th versus the run. They are not good this season. I think it's as good as time as any to let your rookie loose. You know what happened last week when we let our rookie loose in Jamari Sawyer at left tackle, one of the most important positions on that offensive line? He went crazy. And I'm not to say that, Isaiah Spiller is going to go out there and have one of those huge days like Jamari Sawyer did. But my goodness, man, we viewed Jamari Sawyer as a value in the 6th round. We knew his talent. Who's to say that we don't view Isaiah Spiller the same way? I've been talking a lot about Isaiah Spiller this offseason, and honestly, I'm a bit shocked that he hasn't seen any playing time so far. He was a steal in the 4th round. A lot of people projected him in the 2nd or 3rd round. We got him in the 4th. Very similar narrative to Jamari Sawyer. I think it's as good a time as any to let your rookie loose. Spiller has a lot to offer. And I still think that he's going to end up being better than Joshua Kelly, who's been very good this season, as well as Sony Michel. Why they haven't put him in yet, I don't know. And when it comes to his injury status, at this point, I really think that the injury is behind him. At this point, it just feels like the coaching staff is trying to let him earn those reps. I don't know what he needs to do in training camp to really secure those. But in my mind, from what I saw this offseason and the research and the looking into Isaiah Spiller, he should be the RB2 on this team. And so I'm looking for the Chargers to at least give him a chance to prove it in week 5. And if anything, right, make space for him to be active this week. He hasn't been active several games this year, maybe not at all this season. Let's give him some reps, make some space for Isaiah Spiller to go out there and just see what you got in the 4th round rookie, right? I think he could end up being the Chargers RB2 by midseason if he's just given the chance. He's got a lot to offer, and I think he's ready to prove it. So let's see if we can get Isaiah Spiller out there. I think it's a great opportunity to do so versus the Cleveland Browns. Next up, offensive line. We talked a lot about Jamari Sawyer, right? He was fantastic last week. We're hoping to see a similar narrative in Isaiah Spiller this week, but they could be in for a potential test on this offensive line, including Jamari Sawyer, man. Sawyer, this guy, incredible last week versus a Houston Texans defense that was ranked 4th in the league when it comes to sacks. These guys were crazy at getting after the quarterback. You know what Sawyer did? He went out there and he did not allow a single pressure. He's absolutely miles ahead of where he should be as a rookie. But this week, things could be a little bit different. As we mentioned at the top of the episode, Myles Garrett is trending towards playing this week. And of course, recovering from a car accident. We hope he's okay in the long run. It sounds like he will be, but we're not 100% sure what his role is going to be this week. If Myles Garrett comes back in, is he going to play 100% of snaps? Are they going to be careful and cautious with him, giving him, a snap count? What is going to be the plan for Myles Garrett? We just really don't know. We don't know if he's going to be thrown in full force. And meanwhile, on the other side, we got Jadeveon Clowney, who's still questionable with an ankle injury. So what does this mean for the Chargers offensive line? It means be ready for anything. Even if the backups come in, you got to be ready for that. But if Jadeveon Clowney and or Myles Garrett do suit up, it could get crazy out there. Again, Sawyer stepped in heroically last week versus the Texans. But Myles Garrett is an entirely different beast, okay? You've got to respect the strengths of your opponent. And I would say 2 of the biggest strengths for the Cleveland Browns are going to be that running attack and, of course, Myles Garrett almost individually. Myles Garrett is one of the best players in the NFL, and to throw a rookie up against him, it's going to be a situation you're going to want to monitor. Even if Myles Garrett isn't playing anywhere near 100%, that's how much I respect Myles Garrett. You've got to make sure to pay attention to that guy and watch that left side of the line because they're going to get after you. Now, do I think Jamari Sawyer's up to the task? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to put up a flawless performance like last week? Maybe not quite. If Myles Garrett is out there, I think he's going to see some struggles, but I think it's okay, right? You just have to pay attention to the kind of threat that Myles Garrett does provide on the left side of that line. So who knows? More to monitor. We're not going to know anything 100% until kickoff on Sunday. Is Myles Garrett going to be, on a snap count? He's going to be playing 100%. Is Jadeveon Clowney even suiting up that week? We don't know, but it's definitely one to monitor because, again, if one or both of them do suit up, it's going to be a tough day for the Chargers' own line. Next up, I do want to talk a little bit about the plan of attack for the Chargers, okay? This segment's called Sprint Ahead and Force Brissett to Pass, okay? The main goal for the Chargers should be grabbing an early lead versus the Cleveland Browns. And again, it's because you want to identify what they are as a team. This Cleveland Browns team, as evidently, from last season's game, the 47-42 narrow victory for the Chargers, this team knows how to run the ball to the tune of over 200 yards for those running backs for the Cleveland Browns and multiple scores. It was crazy. It was nuts out there, man. And this is especially important to limit the Browns' biggest strength, right? Grabbing that early lead. We know the running attack is lethal. If you can grab that lead, you may be able to limit the success they have on the ground just a little bit, right? But if the Chargers do fall behind, it's going to unleash a big problem in Nick Chubb, okay? If they feel like they've got the space, right? If they feel like they've got the leeway to run even more with Nick Chubb, I think the Chargers are in a bit of a pickle, okay? The run defense, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, is improved. The Chargers' run defense doesn't look anywhere near as bad as it was last season. I know some Chargers fans are like, the run defense isn't that great this year, blah, blah, blah. Do you guys remember 2021? Because I do. That was bad. It was exceptionally bad last year, and I do feel like this year it is improved. But we're talking about one of, if not the best running back in the league right now in Nick Chubb. I feel like when it comes as a pure, bruising, traditional running back, Nick Chubb, in my eyes, is probably the best in the league, and he's freaking amazing. Talking to somebody who owns him in multiple fantasy football leagues, man, I'm a Nick Chubb believer. And that's because I know what he offers. Even though he's not much in terms of a pass catcher, he is one of the best on the ground. Our defense has played admirably this season, no doubt, versus the run. But it's time for our offense, I would say, to step up for the defense. Herbert and the Chargers offense gives the defense their best shot at slowing down Nick Chubb. Get that early lead, force Brissett to pass, and maybe we'll see a little bit less of Nick Chubb and we can sleep a little bit easier in the third and fourth quarter. Oh man, that's got to be the move, right? Beyond that, we need to respect the Browns passing attack as well. We do. We want to push ourselves into that position defensively if we can, because we're very much better equipped to shut that down. Not to say that Jacoby Brissett has been bad this season. I think he's actually been pretty good. I think he's been a serviceable quarterback. He's done very well, but he's not explosive, right? I would almost categorize Jacoby Brissett as like a mobile game manager, I would say. He's got some speed. He's got that next element when it comes to taking off with the ball, but he is, I would say, in my opinion, a game manager quarterback, which is fine for what the Cleveland Browns do, right? While they're waiting for Deshaun Watson to come back, and while they have one of the best, running attacks in the league, might as well, hand it to a guy like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's been doing a good job. But the Chargers are, again, like I said, very well equipped to shut that down. With the Chargers DBs patrolling the field, and then you got Khalil Mack and company coming after Jacoby Brissett, I think this is the better scenario for the Chargers defense than to face a Nick Chubb-led rushing attack. So again, the whole point of this segment, try and grab that lead. If you can go up 14 points, in the first or second quarter, just give yourself a little bit of wiggle room. It's going to force the Browns to at least consider passing a little bit more in the second half. That's the best situation you can put yourself and your defense in, if at all possible. So stay aggressive in the first half. Try and get that lead in the score column just to make things easier on yourself on defense in the second half. And you could say that about pretty much any game, but I would say specifically versus the Browns, that's got to be an emphasis, right? A point of emphasis. Speaking of which, next segment here, kind of alluding to what I just talked about. It's called Keep Your Foot on the Gas and Eye on the Clock. One thing that I did want to mention to Chargers fans that, again, kind of a compliment to the Cleveland team, you got to, stay ahead of Cleveland to limit the rushing attack, yes, but keep in mind, Cleveland has also been a dominant team when it comes to time of possession. And I think it does have a lot to do with how good the rushing attack is. But if you're a team like the Chargers, time of possession could be a precious thing. We've seen games lost because of time of possession for years and years and years. And even this season, the Browns are kind of, masterminds of pulling this off. And I want to make sure that the Chargers, if you need any more incentive to, nabbing and maintaining a healthy lead, it's that the Browns, if they do get the lead, are going to milk the entire game. So watch out for that. Nab and maintain a healthy lead. This is very pivotal, okay? And that was just reinforcing that last point. One of the last things I want to talk about individual players for the Chargers is going to be this man, J.C. Jackson. I know a lot of Chargers fans getting impatient. We talked a little bit about this in our post-game video last week versus the Texans. I understand it. Okay, I get it. The Chargers, the team, the fans, everybody's super hyped when number 27 joined the squad. And he's been slow to start this season, right? He's been about 90%. And I feel like I've been saying something similar in terms of narrative to Austin Eckler. And last week, I was like, this is the week, man. Austin Eckler is going to go out there and he's going to do his thing. And he did it to the tune of 3 touchdowns. Am I saying that's going to happen for J.C. Jackson? Probably not. But I think he's closer to being what we hoped he would be than he has been in weeks past. And I believe a lot of what is affecting his performance this season is his closing speed, right? That's perhaps your best tool as a defensive back in generating interceptions, right? That's what Mr. INT is known for, interceptions. It's going to be very hard to do that if he's still recovering from ankle surgery and just doesn't have that burst, that acceleration, that agility to close the gap between himself and defenders. We've seen him get very close, even in that game versus the Kansas City Chiefs, trying to close in on that, backup tight end that went on in for that score. his closing distance, his closing speed needs to improve a little bit. And I think that's just going to come in time. I think he just needs time to recover. If JC's closer to 100% this week, which I'm starting to feel like he is, I'd like to see him shut down Amari Cooper. At this point, he does state he's around 90%. If he's getting closer to that 100%, I would like to see some proof of that in shutting down Amari Cooper. And if I was to take a bold take approach to this week and JC Jackson, I would say that JC logs his first interception of the season on Sunday. I know a lot of us were hoping to see that week 1, game 1, snap one on defense for JC. I get that. That's the kind of player he can be. But we have to take a look at his situation and his healing and his timeline and make sure that we're not jumping the gun when it comes to our overreactions. If he does continue to trend in this direction throughout, the next 4 or 5 weeks, and yeah, we could definitely start to worry. But we know what JC is as a player, and I do think he starts to take steps in the right direction in proving that to us, the fans, this week. So just keep an eye out for number 27. I think he's in for a big play, maybe even 2. And lastly, the last segment I want on here is going to be called a battle of differentiating strengths. Okay, and this is where things get exciting in terms of NFL fans, okay? If you're on here for whatever reason and you're not a Chargers or Browns fan, first off, I would like you to leave your team in the comment section. Well, I'm just kind of curious to see who watches these videos. And secondly, it's going to be an exciting game for you guys to watch as conscientious objectors, right? The Chargers are a passing team, and I would say a pretty great one. The Browns are a running team, and I would say maybe even the best one, right? Both these teams, in my opinion, when coming into this game, should lean in on their strengths. I'm a very big believer of lean in on your strength, right? The offseason's about creating those strengths, reinforcing weaknesses. But once you're in the seasons, it's a lot harder to adjust. So what I would say the best thing is to do is lean into that strength and buy yourself some time to patch up those problems and weaknesses, right? Both of these teams have very evident strengths, and I would say both these teams should lean into it coming into this game. And ultimately, I think this could lead to a bizarre definition of a shootout, right? Not a standard definition of, both teams are firing through the air and getting a ton of passing yards and putting up a ton of points. I would say the Browns have their version of that. I think the Browns, to me, are a very peculiar team because, in my mind, the only word I can come up with is fearless. Okay, I think Nick Chubb is going to score. I don't know if there's much that the Chargers can do to stop that. He's very good. He's very tough to stop. And again, it's not a tick or attack on the Chargers defense, but more of a compliment to Nick Chubb. He's a very good player. And I think the Browns may squeeze in a passing touchdown as well, but the Chargers have a fantastic counter in a vicious passing attack, right? And that's why I think there's going to be some definition of a shootout. But my point is here, I think there's going to be more points scored in this game than most realize. Not to say that our defense is bad, but I just feel like this dance of ice and fire on offense will result in another moderately high number in the score column. And it's because the Browns, they can score, man. Take a look at their score throughout this season. They've been pretty good in being consistently in the mid-20s to around the 30 points. They've been pretty decent. And they've got, honestly, a weapon that does counter the Chargers defense pretty well. But I also think that the Chargers offense has Justin Herbert, and they've got themselves some pretty nice weapons too. So I think the score is going to be moderately high. So for my score prediction in this video today, I'm going to go with this, okay? And again, it's not going to be as dramatic as what it was last season. I think it was 89 total points scored. It's not going to be anywhere near that, but it's going to be something decent, notable. My score prediction for the Chargers at Cleveland Browns in Week 5 is going to be Browns 27, Chargers 38. I know, everybody. Hold your breath. Let's all calm down here. Just like 27 points to the Browns. Yeah, but also 38 points for the Chargers against the Browns defense. That's already pretty good, right? My bottom line in this one is that ultimately I think this game is going to be within one score. Okay, the Browns are a good team, and I think there is a chance that the Chargers maybe do sprint ahead and bottle up any hopes of the Browns running attack catching up to us. But the thing about the Browns that I was trying to allude to in my last segment that does strike me as curious is that, to me, they are a bit of a fearless team when it comes to running the ball. Even, down 3 possessions, in the fourth quarter, in the third quarter, things look like, you got, analytics say we got to go to the pass, we got to try and catch up quick. I could still see their best chance as to still handing it off to Nick Chubb. And Chubb is capable of shifting a game with his talent alone. And I think the Browns kind of know that. And I think they're fearless in that mentality. They're going to continue running the ball. So even if the Chargers do grab that lead, I think they're going to need it. And I don't know if they're going to slow down with Nick Chubb that much. It will affect it. If the Chargers do grab a lead, it will affect how they, manage the running attack. But I don't know by how much. So it's for this that I think the Chargers do a good job of staying ahead of the Browns. But I think Chubb will keep this Browns team in it until the end. And it could go either way, if I'm to be honest. This is two pretty decent teams. I think there's, honestly some strengths and weaknesses, on both sides. But ultimately, I think the Chargers have an obvious edge on offense that the Browns do not, right? The Browns, in my opinion, they're good, mainly behind Nick Chubb. But I think the Chargers are just better. And that's due to our guy, Justin Herbert. Ultimately, it's Jacoby Brissett out there. They got a great running attack, but Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You just can't mimic that no matter how hard you try as a Browns fan. And I think that's going to be the edge that gives the Chargers the win in this one, and ultimately in a pretty moderately high-scoring game, the victory. So you guys let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? As for my question at the top of the video, I actually don't know if I asked the question this. Do the Chargers hold Nick Chubb under 100 yards? My answer to that would be no. I think Nick Chubb is going to go over 100 yards, but I think the Chargers offense is going to be able to keep pace. So you guys let me know in the comment section below what you think of that. Do you think the Chargers are capable of holding him under 100 yards this game? Well, with that, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Hit us up on your way out with a like and sub if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Oh, by the way, Jacoby Brissett, meet my good friend Khalil Mack on week 5. I think that's going to be a big part of that game on defense as well.